Akasha Lonsdale Deighton is our guest today. Now, listen to all this. She is the founder of the Life Mastery Academy, and her overall passion, is about personal and spiritual development, with her core focus on being positive change from the inside out. Now, she also combines that with emotionally intelligent communication skills. Now, she has done a lot of things, and listen, because I think you're going to benefit by this. Her career choices, which include human resources, psychology, hypnotherapy, and now interfaith ministry, span, are you ready? 5 decades. And her wisdom is a smorgasbord of life lessons, professional study, and practicality. And they're all served with authenticity and a dollops, as she puts, of humor. Welcome from across the pond, as they say, Akasha Lonsdale Deighton.
Hi, Jody. Yes.
Hi. Welcome. You are in France.
Thank you so much. Yes. Bonsoir. Bonsoir. Yes,
bonsoir.
I'm in France. So bonsoir to you, Jody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
I am so glad. We have chatted before, and we've had some really interesting discussions. And actually, before we got on camera, one of the things that we're plugged into in LifeMaven podcast is, how do we make the best of the second half of our life? And how do we kind of reinvent or redo, or whatever you want to call it, about this aging, going around the sun, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things that I asked you before you got in is, how do you stay centered? And you had a very interesting comment about that and how you get your messages as well. Would you like to share about that?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I think what I was really saying is how, for me to do the work I do and to just live in the daily world, I need to keep myself grounded and to keep myself centered. And to do that, it doesn't always work, because being a human being like everybody else, sometimes I feel like I haven't quite plugged into the right socket. But generally, what I do through chanting, through meditation, through prayer, is to ask for the help of the divine, to ask for spiritual help to guide me, to shape my thinking in whatever way to help other people. So that's really one of the most powerful ways for me to keep grounded. But there's something I want to say about that, if I may, about, if you like, spirituality, because I think there's an awful lot of complication created around spirituality. People tend to think, oh, well, am I spiritual? Am I not? Do I have to sit on a mountaintop and meditate? Do I have to do yoga every day? And the way I look at it is, every single one of us, every human being, is spiritual by nature. We just are spiritual beings. And I know they always say we're spiritual beings living in a human body. And I truly do. For me, I do believe that. But it's not about the having to always be chanting or meditating. It's about everyday life. And everybody is spiritual, whether they are, I hope it's okay, whether they're sitting on the toilet, shopping in the supermarket, having a shower, we're still spiritual. However, when we want to really connect, and I do see it sometimes like a row of plug sockets, the middle one is the one that connects directly to the divine. And then there are these other sockets where on maybe days we're not so good and we're trying to find the middle socket. We've gone a bit off corner and we're going in the wrong one. So we're maybe just, a little bit half-hearted about things. Doesn't mean we're not spiritual. Doesn't mean the divine went anywhere. We went somewhere else. The divine didn't shift.
Yes, I love what you are saying, because that is so true, that we have that in us, and it's not something that has to be so fancy or so strange. I know we've talked, I'm sure we talked about, focusing in on the daily activities and making it. And I'm sure in whatever faith that you follow, if you do follow whatever, but they have blessings. And why? Because they make the ordinary, the unordinary, the extraordinary. And I think that I so agree with you that we have it in us. And when you say that,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it's kind of funny because when I was growing up, I didn't know the name for spiritual, but I knew that there was something different about me. I didn't know what it was. And of course, I didn't feel good about myself because I didn't fit in. And my mom and I talked about this many, many years later. And I said, Mom, I think I've always really been spiritual. And she said, yeah. And I just didn't know what to do with it. And she told me that when I was like 50 years old. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because she did recognize it, but it bothered her because it didn't fit in. It was like, what is this? And I wonder if other people are feeling that kind of pull at times. Do you find that in the people that you deal with, that they feel a little bit like maybe pseudo phony, I guess, kind of phony to own it? Do you find that in your practice? Or
Yes. Yeah, I do. I find that a lot. And I think that's why I like to explain it in practical ways. That that it isn't something you don't have to float around and glide around and be dedicate your whole life to a guru or anything like that. The best thing to do is live life. Be a good person, be kind, be a good communicator, all of those things. That is spirituality. That is love in action, without the fluff. As I say, I just think there's such a load of rubbish sometimes talked about what spirituality is. And for me, it's about being grounded and being a decent human being. And I think, when people get that, they suddenly go, oh, do you mean that I am spiritual? And I go, of course you're spiritual. And sometimes it shines out of them that they're spiritual, but because they've not been following a road and doing this practice or that practice, they don't think they are. I said, just be you. Just keep doing what you're doing, and let's go even further inside so that you can shine even more from the inside out.
And I love that, because that inside out and knowing that we go inside out will also keep us on the path to know that there's more to life, that we don't have to buy into other things around us. And you have done this for, my gosh, 5 decades. Okay. That's a bit of time. And I know I've done I call it spiritual explorations in about 1973 or so. What have you noticed today? Do you notice a trend? Do you notice something that maybe you didn't see years ago, or something that you...
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I do notice a lot of differences, particularly in younger people. And funny enough, over the years, I've worked with a number of people in their 20s, so they're kind of evolving. And what I find, and now with the young people, is they're really self-assured in some ways, but massively lacking in reality in others. So many young people are aspiring to the Kardashians, or these, more, bigger, better, must have, etc., etc. And I truly believe that is the path to narcissism and egocentricity, and away from probably the beauty that they just are in themselves. And I've noticed that becoming more and more the case over the recent years. I'd say probably the last 10 years. And particularly this one client I've worked with since she was 22, and she's now 32. So on and off, we've been working for 10 years. And, she checks in, and we have a sort of mentoring session. How are you doing? What do you need to work on? That kind of thing. And she was commenting on exactly the same thing in our last session, that's what she notices. But because of the work we've done, she's not bought into it. She looks gorgeous. I mean, but she hasn't had work done, and she's no intention of getting anywhere. And it's like you need to. You look like a model anyway. But she can see I want to say, inauthenticity that is around. And I think it's not just in young people. I think it's also in a number of older people who are maybe struggling with, as you say, perhaps the second half of life. Maybe they haven't got a purpose anymore. They're struggling, and they need to find a direction or find who they are. So yeah, I have noticed a definite change over the years, without a doubt.
Yeah, because I was wondering about that, because I can just see that it almost, I think, of like a toolbox of what we, can put together to make our best life. And
Yeah.
someone like you, I can just see just going on for the next 40 years, because you have that purpose, you have that in life. And I think that there's something for all of us. And I think finding it can be a challenge at times. I know for me it has been. I mean, it's up and, sometimes I think I'm on the road and other times I don't. And I just have to go one day at a time a lot just to get there.
And exactly. And that is really the best approach, is one day at a time. There are no, in my experience anyway, there are no quantum leaps. I mean, people can make great strides in awareness and self-discovery, but then it's I always love the Buddhist principle of one foot in front of the other foot in front of the other foot, and it's slowly forward. Because if we try and rush to a destination, I mean, some people, they're like high-speed trains. They get on and they're whoosh in LA before they've even finished getting on the train almost. And it's not healthy and it's not helpful. Sometimes we do just need to slow down, and we don't always get it right. I mean, my goodness me, if we spent the next 3 hours, I could give you some insights as to how wrong I have gotten things on occasions. But it's the journey, that word, the journey, which everyone goes, oh no, not the journey word. Well, I don't care about that. It is a journey.
I love that.
In my world.
I love it. It really is. And I have not always wanted the journey. I wanted the event. I used to say, okay, how about this? Just let me know, God, when I'm going to be miserable so I can set up my 6 months on my calendar. And then know that, then I can go through the 6 months and know it's going to be there. And that's.
I love that.
Yeah, well, I wanted life. Let's just do this. Come on, baby. Let's just do one thing after the other. And we both know it's not that way. And when do we, unfortunately, I think it says I see people my age die, that I realize more and more the fragility of life. And as we, of course, around my age, just about everybody has lost a parent or both parents or whatever. And, death is not such a unusual thing that happens,
Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of curious. How did you decide to get into what you're doing, and what was it that propelled you into doing what you do?
Right. Well, I love that word, propel. Yeah, I do have a kind of a sense that the divine was propelling me into different things. And I would say, I mean, from where I started, there was quite a long time when I didn't know what I wanted to do, except I always knew it had to be about people, and it had to be in some way working with people. And eventually I found my way into human resources, and through there I kind of worked my way through my professional ladder, if you like, got to the top of the tree. But I was in a position where I was working for a company that really didn't care about people. And it was a question of, give me your keys, you're out the door now. And I had to put the packages together. And I woke up one day and I thought, what am I doing? This is soul destroying. I can't carry on doing this. What else? And so I actually said, look, can I have some guidance? And this was before I've always been spiritually oriented, but I just said, help me out here. Can I get a bit of a guideline? And I tell you, I woke up one morning and I said, I'm going to be a psychotherapist. And I was married at the time. I mean, I'm married now, but I was married to my first husband. And I said to him, I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a psychotherapist. And he went, you're right. Okay. Yeah. He was a policeman. And so I literally that day I got on to, it wasn't the internet then. I did research and I found out a course I wanted to do in London. They were taking on students in the September. I signed up and I started a 3-year program. to become a psychotherapist and a hypnotherapist. And that was just the beginning of the most incredible journey, because I had to obviously undergo my own personal therapy as part of that training. And also parallel with that, I decided to do some external deep dive experiential work that really tapped into some deep pain and wounds that were there. So once I had done that, I set up my practice and I became a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, moved away from the corporate world. And there was a kind of another story from that too. And I had a practice within the health service, the corporate world. I developed a program that I took back. I thought there's something missing about stress management, which was new at that time. And I was doing some studying and research about it. And I found this incredible link between emotional intelligence and stress and heart disease. And I put the two together and I created a package that I then took into the corporate world to help people understand why, if they were stressed, it's going to lead them to maybe heart disease. But the positive, of course, was what could they do about it? And that fell on them. So we go back to the positive change from the inside out, utilizing communication as an absolute key of that. And then I've always been a minister. I think people say to me, "Oh, Akasha, you've always been a minister, you know, since you were yay high." I do have friends that I still know from childhood, and they say, "Well, you've kind of always been like that. You've always been there for people and listened and whatever." So when I was really getting to another stage in my life, I thought, what else, Lord? What else? You know, give me some guidance here again. And I had approached the Christian church a few times. I thought maybe I'll become a vicar, you know, with the dog collar. And it was almost as though every time I got close to Christianity of the more organized type, there was like this, that was a propelling in the opposite direction. And I thought, no, this is not for me. And I'd been brought up an atheist, but I'd always known there was something more. And I thought, this isn't it. This isn't it. I went that route several times, and each time it was boom, no. And then I came across the Interfaith Alliance through a television program I was watching with a Benedictine monk, an ex-Benedictine monk, who was inquiring about the different faiths and why they fought each other. And there was like this incredible light bulb went on, and I thought, oh, Interfaith Alliance, what is that? That speaks to my heart. And I got on the internet and I found out that there was a seminary in London, that it was about inclusivity. It was about all faiths, all sexes, everything. It was totally inclusive. And I signed up. They accepted me onto their training. And so I trained with them for 2 years, and then I was ordained in 2006. So now I combine ministry with ceremonies and everything else with all of the other things that, you know, I have done over the years. And that is a joy, because it means I'm serving people yet again in a different way.
So the interfaith, now I have to tell you, I'm from a different background. And so for me, interfaith means marrying somebody of a different religion. I mean, that's my frame. But you said interfaith ministry. So I'm trying to figure out, what do you mean by that, frankly?
Right. Yeah, I can understand that, because if you have inter-faith, it means people working between different faiths. So you would have maybe the rabbis would be working with vicars to try and understand each other. You would have the imam. So they would be working with each other. Interfaith without the hyphen is the inclusivity of all. So I work with people from all different faiths. So yes, I actually perform ceremonies for people from different faiths. So maybe Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Christian, Jewish, Islam, etc. So I will find something that works from both faiths and bring them together. But it is really about the inclusivity. So for me, there is just one source, and many paths, many sacred paths to reach that one divine source. And all of them are of huge value. All of them are to be respected, and there is much wisdom in all of them. Different people choose different paths. Absolutely fine. What I find distressing is when they end up obviously fighting and opposing each other, and I'm right and you're wrong. I can't be doing with that. That's why interfaith speaks to me. There's no right, wrong. It just is one source, many paths, all are sacred, all are to be respected. And that's my heart. That's what speaks to me.
It reminds me of the word universe, one verse. And we really are. Yeah.
Completely. And that's why I like the Unity Church and the Unitarians for that reason. I think that they have a slightly more Christian base, but they are all inclusive. And when I've been doing some of my family history, I found that a number of us going back to the sort of 18th, 17th century were Quakers. So they are very peaceable people who commune directly with whatever name you want to give it, with God, the divine, great spirit. And their connection is a direct one, and they speak when they are moved to speak, and not for the sake of speaking.
That wouldn't be bad for all of us, really. Oh,
yes, you're right, Jody.
If we're at a meeting, just kind of speak when we're moved and really just listen. Because I think that sometimes we don't really listen to what somebody else is going to say. We're like, okay, now what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? And instead, when I'm hearing from you, it's really be in that moment, really just listen. And that's the spiritual part. That is how we can maintain our spirituality and help us to have a more vibrant life in that kind of grounding is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it isn't just in the spiritual life. It is really, it's something I'm really passionate about, good, effective communication skills, because on the basis of health as well, health and well-being, when something doesn't go out, when it isn't expressed and spoken, if it's something negative, it's just going to go in and make us ill. But the skill is finding the way to have difficult conversations in a way that is not blaming, that is supportive, that opens the way for a two-way communication. And part of that is respectful listening. It's intuitive listening, and really being available with your heart and your mind to connect and hear what someone else is saying, even when you don't want to hear it and it's painful, and the instinctual feeling might be to lash out or fire back. Is just to find that grounded place and be able to do that. And I work a lot with people to help them find that way of communicating. So I always, one of my little strap lines is straight talking from the heart, because that's the difference. I mean, a lot of people will say, I just say it straight. I'm direct talker. I just say what's there. No, don't just say what's there. That's just, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up, I'm talking. That's a recipe for absolute disaster. So it is about the appropriate way of communicating. It's about ownership of language, speaking from I and not you are two key things. So I am really passionate about effective communication.
And I love that. And, I have to ask you, you're living in France. You've been there 7 years. You are from the UK. Yes. Communication. How do you do it there? I mean, that's right. Like, woo. I mean, that must be quite a challenge. You're in another culture. And granted, you speak some French, if I understand right, and you've been there a while, but you're still not French, and you are still from another culture.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it is a very different culture. And I have to say, where we are, the people are have been very warm and welcoming. And we only I live in a small village, but people have been lovely. But you are right. It is a different culture, different food, different way of being. The French are very direct, but they are direct in the straight talking, I'm just going to tell you how it is, now shut up way, rather than being, however, if they are like that and you go, no, I'm not having that, they will go, okay, right, now we'll start again. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I speak some French, but I don't speak it well enough. My bad, because I haven't learned it. I'm quite good at languages, but my health, I've had some health problems as well, and I haven't dived in the way that I could. And it does make communication difficult. But, I think I always say a smile is an international language. And so if in doubt, I smile. Now, what's interesting is the French don't smile a lot, and they are suspicious of smiling. And they say about they say about people from the UK, they're very smiley, and they don't trust smiley people.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, not all French people, but they don't trust smiley people. Wow. So when I go around and I say bonjour, they're like, bonjour.
Oh my goodness.
So they're very distant until they get to know you. Once they get to know you, they're lovely, warm people. But in the beginning, they're quite, okay, we're just going to suss you out a little bit and see who you are, and do we like you, and we'll take our time. Maybe, 5 meetings later, we might, get a little closer. So yes, it is a very different culture. Yeah.
So you've really changed in your communication then. You've, in how you approach them, and to be successful, quote unquote, to be able to live in that environment for 7 years, to me, is quite successful. I mean, to stay there and to be a part of it, and to, to live in a society where, obviously, I don't know a whole lot about the French society, but I know if I was there, I love living in America. I love my American this and that. I mean, I'm just drenched in, loving the United States. So there's a lot of things that I know other countries really don't have that we have. And that's an adjustment. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I lived in some foreign countries much younger, when I was much, much younger. And it was fine. It was, I don't know if this is true for you, but I can tell you, I came back with such an appreciation for our democracy. And the fact is that I can live free, and that I can, express myself, and just a deeper appreciation for the fact that I live in a country where I'm free, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, it's an interesting one, because France is very political in lots of ways. And of course, they have their equality, fraternity, etc. They're very much about connection, brotherhood. Like in the community here in La Parade, everybody knows everybody, and they're very connected, which is a good thing and not a good thing. And I think, freedom of speech. Yes, freedom of speech is okay. I mean, you listen to a couple of French people having a conversation, you think, a bit like in Spain, actually, sometimes you think they're having an argument or about to have a fisticuff fight, but they're just having a debate about the politics and this and that. They love their politics, the French. So they were being, so it is different. But we are going to go returning to the UK, because there are many, many things that both of us want to do in however many years we have left, and it's going to be a lot easier to do it for a number of reasons in my home country.
So it's not necessarily because of your age or something. It's just more of your preference, because now you've been in this country for quite a while. Now it's time to go back home.
Yeah, and as we're aging, there are all kinds of considerations, because we like to think ahead rather than just sort of think, well, one day, this might happen or that might happen. We think ahead as to what might we need as we get older, where might we want to be. But for me, it's even more important that I think, that the divine will take care of that. But I want to do more work in the area that I work in. So I want to do more ceremonies and not just weddings. I love weddings. Weddings are beautiful, but I want to do more funerals, and I like to do baby blessings. Funerals are really important, because so often they're done badly. And I think that that last farewell for somebody is crucial. It has to be done well. It has to be, otherwise, I've seen so many bad funerals. And that is one of the things that made me think I really want to do funerals as well, because I could do so much better for the person and the family left behind.
You've got to meet somebody that I was also on this podcast. She is a life transition guide. And what she does, she doesn't necessarily get in the funerals, but she believes that after the person dies, literally dies, because my dad was in hospice and I shared with her about that. And he was at home and he died, and how I kind of breezed over it. And I said, let's move on. And she said, no, don't do that. She said that there's a whole ritual to remember the person and the energy and have everybody share that. And what I'm hearing from you is that kind of sharing of that specialness, and to make it more of just like, kind of like, okay, let's move on kind of thing. And I really hadn't thought about it because, he was dead. I mean, I was like, well, he's dead. How long can you sit around, guys? But she had mentioned to me, I mean, he died a long time ago, but she said that, there's a whole way of doing that so that you honor that. You even do that with the dying. And I'm hearing that from you with the service. Would you share what you can offer the people that are listening today?
Well, years of wisdom, years of experience, years of life experience, which has been tough on occasions, really tough. I mean, I've come through a lot from childhood upwards, and that has shaped and informed who I am as well. And sometimes when people hear my story, they say, oh my goodness me, if you could do it all over again, if you went back and you had your time again, surely you would do it differently. And I always say, no, I wouldn't have one single thing be different, because the blessing and the gift of that for me is who I am now. And I like to believe I'm a kind and a compassionate person. Sure, I can be grumpy, bad-tempered, all those other things, but the core of who I am is a kind heart and a good heart, and wanting the best for other people. And I don't know if I'd have had that had I not have had the upbringing that I did. And I'm really happy about that. And I think that probably is one of my quotes. One of my quotes is, there is never a problem without a gift for you in its hands. And to me, that's the summary. Every problem has got a gift. Very difficult to see it sometimes in the moment. It can be with hindsight. But boy, when I look back at my life, I can see that it was loaded with gifts, with bows and sparkles, and all sorts on the top.
Well, thank you for sharing your gifts today. And you will have to come back, because I know there's a lot that we kind of skimmed over because we only have so much time. But thank you. Thank you so much, Akasha. Akasha Lonsdale Deighton, has been just a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Me too. I've loved speaking with you. Bye, Jody.
Bye. And thank you everyone. So much.